Episode 11. What if World War I never happened? World War I is often remembered as the great rupture of modern history. It destroyed empires, redrew the global map, and opened the door to revolutions, dictatorships, and another, even deadlier war. But what if it had never happened? What if, in the summer of 1914, Europe's leaders had stepped back from the brink? Let's dive deep into this alternate history, exploring how politics, daily life, technology, and culture might have unfolded in a world without the Great War. Empires that never fell. Austro-Hungarian Empire. Instead of collapsing into small nation-states, this vast, multicultural empire could have survived and gradually reformed. Imagine a federal union where Czechs, Hungarians, Croats, Poles, and Austrians shared power in a kind of proto-European union. Vienna remains a world capital, thriving in music, art, and science. Central Europe avoids the constant nationalism and border wars of the 20th century. By 2025, we might be talking about a Danube Federation as one of the world's great powers, standing alongside the US and China. Ottoman Empire. The Middle East would look nothing like it does today. No Sykes-Picot borders. Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine would remain Ottoman provinces. The discovery of oil in Mesopotamia could have made the empire a global energy giant, perhaps rivaling the US in economic power. Istanbul might still be a cosmopolitan capital, bridging east and west, with the Sultan or a reformed parliament ruling over millions. Would that mean more stability? Possibly. Without colonial interference, maybe fewer conflicts. But authoritarian rule might have slowed democracy and modernization. Russian Empire. No war. No 1917 revolution. The Romanovs could have transitioned slowly toward a constitutional monarchy like Britain. No Lenin. No Stalin. No gulags. No Soviet Union. No Cold War. No nuclear standoff. Instead, Russia might have remained conservative, rural, and monarchist well into the 20th century. Imagine Moscow and St. Petersburg as glittering imperial capitals rather than gray Soviet cities. A different balance of power. Without the destruction of Europe, the United States might not have risen so quickly. It would remain wealthy, but not yet the world's policeman. The British Empire might have stayed strong, still ruling vast colonies with less pressure to grant independence. The global balance of power could remain multipolar. Britain, France, Germany, Russia, the Ottomans, and Austria-Hungary competing, but none dominant. The economy of a peaceful 20th century, World War I, wrecked Europe's economy. In our timeline, debt, inflation, and depression crippled entire societies. But in a world without war, Europe would remain the world's financial hub. The British pound might still be the world's main reserve currency instead of the US dollar. Global trade could grow steadily without collapsing into protectionism. Population growth would be stronger, since tens of millions would not have died. We might live in a world where European cities are even larger, wealthier, and more dominant. Technology without the Great War. This is where things get really interesting. War accelerates invention, but it also wastes resources. Technologies that might arrive later. Tanks and armored vehicles. Born in 1916, they might not appear until the 1940s. Military aviation. Airplanes developed rapidly during the war. Without it, passenger flight might not become common until decades later. In 2025, air travel might feel more like a luxury than an everyday reality. Chemical warfare. Poison gas pushed advancements in chemistry. Without it, pesticides, plastics, and synthetic materials might have developed slower. Radar and radio, much slower without the military need. Civilian broadcasting could have been delayed. Technologies that might arrive sooner, but peace has its own accelerators. Medicine. Instead of investing in killing machines, nations could pour resources into hospitals, vaccines, and public health. The 1918 flu pandemic might have been handled better or prevented. Life expectancy could be much higher today. Consumer technologies, cars, household appliances, and electricity grids could spread faster without wartime disruption. By the 1930s, Europe might already look like the 1950s in our timeline. Education, more schools, universities, and scientific institutes. Knowledge would spread faster across society. Imagine a 21st century where cancer treatments or space travel are decades ahead, but where commercial flight or computers are behind. Culture without trauma. World War I scarred the arts. It produced the lost generation. Writers and poets like Hemingway, Owen, and Remarque, who depicted despair, futility, and death. Without war, the Belle Epoque. Optimism might have continued, with bright, colorful art and joyful literature dominating Europe. Cities like Paris and Vienna could remain centers of elegance and creativity, not scarred by trenches and shell shock. Surrealism and Dadaism, born from trauma, might never emerge. Instead, maybe we'd see a continuation of Impressionism or Art Nouveau. But one cost: women's rights. In reality, women entered the workforce en masse during the war and demanded the vote. Without that experience, suffrage might have been delayed. Women might still have won rights eventually, but more slowly and unevenly. No Hitler, no World War II. This might be the single biggest change. Adolf Hitler's rise depended entirely on the humiliation of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. Without it, he remains a failed artist in Vienna. The Nazi Party never forms. There is no World War II, no Holocaust, no genocide. What would life be like instead? Jewish communities in Eastern Europe would still exist. Cities like Krakow, Vilnius, and Odessa would be filled with Jewish music, literature, and science. Warsaw, Dresden, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, all spared from destruction. The atomic bomb might not even be invented, since it was the Second World War that drove nuclear research. Instead of a century dominated by fear of annihilation, the 20th century might have been remembered as a long period of steady progress. Colonialism and independence. Here lies another paradox. World War I weakened Britain and France, and the colonies demanded independence. India gained its freedom, and waves of decolonization followed. Without the war, the British Empire might survive much longer. India could remain under colonial rule until the late 20th century. Africa might not begin decolonizing until the 1970s or 1980s. France might still control Algeria and Indochina. So while Europe avoids tragedy, millions of people in Asia and Africa endure decades more under imperial domination. Everyday life in the alternate 20th century. Think about ordinary families. A British village in 1916 does not lose half its young men. Instead, those boys grow into fathers and grandfathers. In Germany, no generation grows up bitter and broken, yearning for revenge. In Russia, peasants live under monarchy, not gulags. In the Middle East, families live under Ottoman law, rather than enduring endless wars of borders. By 2025, Europe might be more populated, wealthier, and filled with historic cities untouched by bombing. Life might feel less chaotic, more continuous, with traditions preserved. Would it be a better world? This alternate world is not simply better or worse. It is different. Gains in this alternate world. No World War I, no World War II, no Holocaust, no atomic bombings, no Cold War, millions of lives saved. Losses in this alternate world, slower women's rights, longer colonial domination, delayed technological breakthroughs, possibly less democracy, since empires endure longer. The 20th century without the Great War would be safer, but also more conservative. Less destruction, but also less transformation. Final reflection. World War I was one of history's darkest chapters, but also one of its greatest turning points. To imagine its absence is to imagine a world that is both more peaceful and more stagnant. A world where families are whole, cities are intact, and empires still dominate. A world without Hitler, without nuclear fear, but also without the revolutions that gave us independence, equality, and rapid progress. It is a reminder that history is fragile. One bullet in Sarajevo reshaped the lives of billions. Without it, the 20th century and our present world would be almost unrecognizable. And this takes us straight into our next chapter. Episode 12, The League of Nations, a dream for peace after the Great War. How did the world try to rebuild order after such chaos? Could an international organization really stop the next war? Or was it doomed from the start? If you don't want to miss that story, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, so you'll be the first to watch episode 12 when it drops.